poppin'? What's cracking? What's shaking, everybody? Happy New Year! Happy New Year to you, Grace. What's up, Grace? How you doing?
Happy New Year, Chill. I am doing amazing. Happy New Year, everybody. Super excited for today's episode, first episode of 2022.
It is, and I'd like to start off this episode before we get into any topics. I'm going to go ahead and drop something real quick.
Lord, I haven't heard this, guys, so this is going to be fresh for me, too.
It's up. The store is open. The comic cinematic universe merch is live, everybody. So I have put up everything that I've worked on, from tees to hats to hoodies, sweatshirts, even stickers. So we got a little bit of everything for everybody. So I will be posting the link in our bio on Instagram. And I should have had it up by now. Apologies. Been busy. But but yeah, we officially got our merch out here, y'all. So check us out, you know what I'm saying? Because I know Grace is super
Guys,
excited.
oh yes, I did know about this, guys. I'm sorry. For some reason, I thought you were gonna announce something different. I'm like, oh my god, what? What are we doing? What's
Nah.
new? I was actually gonna try to wear my shirt today, but as I'm like scattering to prep for like today's episode, I was just like, no time. We will wear it on the next one. But please check it out, guys. It looks super cool, and you guys can support like in any fashion, whether if it's you want to buy like a whole new wardrobe or just share your support and get some stickers and things like that for your friends. Show the love. We're really
Yeah.
excited about this.
Super excited. So now I will be changing. We're gonna go to our regular scheduled programming real quick. So the title of today's episode, episode 16, is the 2021 MCU wrap up plus the Phase 4 predictions. So we've kind of been waiting to well, I've been waiting to more so go into these predictions because I feel like as of right now, as far as what we're getting with all of these shows and movies, nothing has really concluded. It's like, yeah, the movies and shows have like ended as far as like seasons or whatnot, or the movie just in general, but it's setting up for the future, which I'm super hopeful for, and I'm ready to get into those predictions. But as of right now, we're going to take it back to 2021 real quick and kind of discuss what happened in 2021. So, Grace, please.
Oh, guys, well, 2021 was such a huge year for MCU because it was the big start of a whole new phase for us, and not just a whole new phase, but a whole new saga entirely. And really, I think that this first year of Phase 4, if you will, is lot of like transitional things, right? We're having a lot of themes that I'm so excited to kind of get into, like the passing of the torch, the introduction of the multiverse, really things that are kind of new, right? Like the characters we've been with for so long, up to this point, and now we've been transitioning into the passing of the mantle and saying goodbye to a lot of these characters that we just absolutely love.
Mm-hmm.
But opening our hearts and minds and souls to all these new stories and new characters that we've already been meeting in this year, and now it's going to be just be more to come. But yes, I think this year of films has just been, I mean, obviously just the beginning of this phase, but it's really like a slingshot, just kind of like getting ready for what I think this next year is going to bring. And I'm just super excited about all of it. So
Yeah.
I forgot what you even asked me to talk about, but there you go.
Oh well, I wanted you to just kind of go into, let's say, let's get this thing going as far as chatting about 2021, because say at the top of the year, the first thing that we did get um, was Loki. No. First thing we got was WandaVision.
WandaVision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and listen, it's been a long year. 2021, super long. Okay, but a lot of good stuff came out of it, and we I'm just gonna run down the list.
Do it.
Uh, we got WandaVision, then we got Hawkeye. No, no, not Hawkeye. The Flat Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And then we got Loki, and then we got Hawkeye. So those were the shows that came out on Disney Plus, and then we got
And what if?
oh,
What
and
if?
What If, and What
Mhm.
If. But we also got the movies. We got Black Widow. We got was the Eternals next?
I believe it was Shang-Chi,
Shang
then
Chi, then
Eternals.
Eternals,
Hmm.
and then
Yes.
Spider Man. No Way Home. So,
Yes.
uh, 2021 was a good year for Marvel. Now, I've talked to a few people and online, and they have their concerns about this kind of being like a Marvel based podcast. But for me, I feel like DC just has to step it up. And this is the year. I would say 2022 we're going to kind of get a shift from not only just talking about Marvel, but DC has a lot of things coming up, and we're about to get into the Peacemaker when that drops. And then they have their whole lineup that we talked about for the DC fandom. So I kind of just wanted to throw it out there that this isn't just necessarily all Marvel. It's just that 2021 Marvel had a great year. So
An epic year. I mean, this is the year following the events of Endgame. You know what I mean?
right.
So, this year, Marvel. I mean, I don't know. Maybe like a yearly thing. We'll have to tally up the points from Marvel and DC and see who
Mm-hmm.
won. But definitely, Marvel did a lot, and we definitely broke down the DC things that did come out. I mean, Suicide Squad 2, I think, was one of the most amazing movies. I loved it. I know you had mixed feelings. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But this year definitely has a lot of projects in store for DC. So I'm excited for us to kind of just diversify some of the conversations. But Marvel was just kind of not letting us breathe with all the stuff that they were bringing out. So what can we say, guys?
Right. And
Yeah.
say as far as uh, say your topics, like the topics that we discussed. Um, we first are going to get into passing the torch, and I'm going to post up that image of um, the torch pass from Captain America, Black Widow, and Hawkeye. Now, these are the three, I'll say, first torches that are being passed because things are coming in the future to where somebody is going to fill that Iron Man mantle. That's Ironheart, correct?
Yes, and even like there was obviously like in Spider-Man Far From Home, that was also a lot of like the themes in that, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
think Spider-Man was feeling the weight of having to fill in for Tony. But yeah, Ironheart is coming out as well.
And from what we know about Thor: Love and Thunder, that's going to now be passed on to a jacked version of Jane. Just I don't want to put the image of her being super swole, but
Yes.
as of right now, yeah, like Thor, I think his story, if anything, may be coming to a close. Who knows? I can't really call it, but I believe that's the route that the MCU is taking. So they're opening up everything as far as um, kind of diving more into some previous like unknown characters or not well known characters and introducing newer characters. Now, I was talking to my brother earlier today to say that Marvel's doing it right. And by that I mean nobody nobody really thought to think about Hawkeye or even like Falcon or anything like that without these shows because I think in the movies Winter Soldier got a little bit more shine, which he did well at. But like it's shows like these to where I just rewatched the first episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier and the opening to where he's flying over the desert trying to save somebody. That was like Falcon in all of his glory. And I can say almost the same exact thing for Hawkeye in the last episode of Hawkeye, to where they're on the ice and they're shooting everything out of the arsenal. We only got to really see bits and pieces of Hawkeye, but in the past in the movies. But here we got to see him uh, in most Hawkeye way, if that makes sense. So 2021, they Marvel did it right as far as bringing these. I won't say smaller, but these other characters into the light and making them shine the way they did.
Yeah, in place of say like the Trinity, which was like Thor, Cap, and Iron Man, like we're allowing these characters that have been somewhat like second string
Mm-hmm.
to be in like the forefront of these stories. So yeah, I think that was done so well this year. And just kind of revisiting that idea of passing on the mantle, I think that it really hit home with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which we yet had to have to like break down for you guys. That's an episode we hope to do just because there's so much I think to dive into detail with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like having started this year with obviously that's the show that goes after WandaVision, but I think it's the first one of this year to start talking about that whole passing of the mantle, and I think it's so fitting that they did it with this story because obviously like not everyone is fit to handle the weight of what these characters mean to people, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that series really showcased that with John Walker, really crumbling under the weight of Cap's shield and just what that means. Like, not
Mm-hmm.
everyone is fit for that role. And so I think to start off with that series and having that be such a huge topic of it, I think it showcases that the characters we see taking on those mantles, taking on those roles, and like that whole passing of the torch here forward, like they are up for it. Like Kate Bishop showed her like her I guess like worth of coming in and calling herself partners with Hawkeye, Yelena Belova, Sam, all of that. Like these characters are ready to take on that weight, and
Mm-hmm.
it's almost also like a really good homage to Cap. Because we already knew how amazing he was, but I think this show really showcased how rare of a thing he was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just feel like that's such a huge topic that came up in this year. And I think for it to really um, start with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier in the way that they did was a really great choice.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And just for, let's say, Falcon, now that he is Captain America, right? Um, this was something that was coming no matter what because that was the way that it went in the comic books, But I think from here, this goes into to questioning. Actually, I want to pose this question to you. Say yes, he was handed the shield and now he's Captain America. But say if a team is being formed and he is the who he is he the one to take that leadership role?
I don't know. I mean, we know he can, right? When we are first introduced to him in Captain America and the Winter Soldier, the movie,
Mm-hmm.
we see him being very much a leader and a guide for, say, like veterans who are dealing with a lot of trauma, being, just in the military and
Mm-hmm.
dealing with all of those things. So we know he has a lot of leadership qualities, and I
Mm-hmm.
think he understands how much is behind all of it because there's a lot of hesitance when he takes on the mantle of Cap, or like he really pushed it, right away because I feel like he just didn't feel ready,
Mm-hmm.
and so I feel like he can definitely, fit into that. Who knows in what like fashion? Like, are we gonna get like an Avengers assemble again? Are we gonna get, like I know the X-Men are still a thing to come. Like, are we gonna get like West Coast Avengers? Because we did leave off of, the last thing a series we saw was Hawkeye and Mockingbird. I'm sorry, this is not Hunger Games. Mockingbird is they're the founders of West Coast Avengers. So I'm like, so it's like so many different questions in terms of how it's gonna look now that so much of the team is scattered. But I feel like Sam, I mean, I'm trying to think of someone else who would be like the closest one to fit that. And I feel like Sam is like the right choice, really.
Well, when I was talking to my younger brother earlier, it became a heated debate, and it was heated for the fact that, say, um, as far as leadership is concerned, and he like we posed the question to each other as if like if we were to pick five, a team of five to go up against the next big bad, whoever it is, right?
Mhm.
Who would you pick and why? And he obviously went for uh, the strongest Avengers as far as their abilities and powers and strengths, but he laughed when I threw Hawkeye back into that conversation, and he laughed because he countered Hawkeye with Captain America, but for me, I feel like Captain America didn't reach honestly leadership potential until Endgame. And with that being said, it was like yes, in the first Avengers, he led the no not the first Avengers, first Captain America, he led the squadrons or whatnot. But I can say that the super soldier serum was almost like a crutch for people to actually follow his lead, you know? And if we're talking leaders of a brand new team, because we don't know what the MCU has as far as going forward, um, I I don't see anybody as far as who can actually lead a squad because Hawkeye is gone. Okay. Well, I'm not gonna say gone, but it just made more so be Kate Bishop, where I would say she's not ready. Um,
Right. Agree.
and as of right now, Doctor Strange is kind of his own man, you know. Um, and what else? What else? What else? I had one other person I kind of wanted to bring up when I was talking to him.
Wanda,
Well,
Yelena.
Wanda and Yelena, those I can't see uh, as a leader just because they haven't been shown. Wanda's right now she's too erratic, and Yelena she's trying to figure out what to do with her life, being that her main mission just now was to kill Hawkeye, but in actuality he didn't do. He loved her sister, you know. So
Mhm.
as far as the leadership roles, as far as passing the torch, those are big shoes to feel, not feel to fill, and I
Feel them, fill them.
and I don't know if Falcon has that. Like how do you think about that? How do you feel about that?
I mean, looking at the people that we have right now, when it comes to like the leadership role, I do feel like Falcon could do that. Like to be the one to unite these people who are very much on their own little journeys.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everyone's kind of on their own path right now, which is very similar how we first got introduced to many of these characters, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it took a couple years before we saw Iron Man team up with, everybody else,
Right.
right? But in looking at the people we have, like I feel like he is the one to kind of bring them together as of now. I mean, we still have a lot of characters that we need to be introduced to. Like we're going to meet Jennifer Walters. Is that what I'm saying correctly? Or Jessica Walters? Jennifer Walters, She-Hulk. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying it correctly. We still have to meet her. We're going to meet America Chavez. We're going to meet a lot of different characters that we still don't know yet in the context of the MCU that could potentially be that.
Mm-hmm.
But from the ones we have, I just feel like Falcon is the most like centered in a way. Like enough to take on the Cap mantle,
Mm-hmm.
even though that's a very tall order to fill. That even I don't think anyone can really fill it the way that Cap did.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he would be up for like the leadership role, Falcon.
Okay. I just wanted to pose that just because as of right now, I feel like there may be only one leader in the MCU, and unfortunately, we don't even know who it is because initially I was gonna say Val, but Val is working for somebody to collect these individuals to form whatever group they're gonna form, you know. But as of right now, on the side of good, who knows? Because even I say I'll back up and say Falcon, sure, because not only because initially I thought you were just going to go the seniority route, but the way that he worked with Bucky, and Bucky sees that potential. You know, that was the reason why he wanted him to become Captain America and everything like that. He saw those characteristics, and Bucky now is somebody who will pretty much follow Sam anywhere in the battle. You know, so
Hmm.
maybe Falcon or now Captain America is the actual leader of the new group that forms in Phase 4.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like we're gonna have like multiple teams being formed with this phase
Mm-hmm.
because we have the team that Val's building up, which I am, we'll kind of dive into once we get a little deeper into like our, predictions for the next phase.
Mm-hmm.
We got that. I feel like maybe like West Coast Avengers could be a thing.
You
Also, it
hope.
looks like we have like I don't know. I just feel like that'd be kind of fun. Like bring them over to California,
Right.
but or even like the Young Avengers, which seems to be that's something that's kind of brewing with just the people we've seen, like Kate Bishop, Wanda's kids, and all of that. So there, it seems like we're going to be introduced to several teams, and so who knows how it's going to kind of hash out. And then we also have people like Shang-Chi, and we have people from like we have the Eternals. Like we have a lot of different characters, and we don't really know what their bigger role is going to be just yet. Like this is
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the first year when everyone united, when all of this kind of started, so it's exciting. It's exciting because there's so many different possibilities, and even more so because the multiverse is a thing,
Mm-hmm.
so um yeah, that's kind of where I stand.
Okay. Like when I was forming my team, because of course he went with Doctor Strange. I didn't put Doctor Strange on my team. I actually put Wong above Strange.
Oh my god, you know what? Yes.
I mean, who
Yes.
knows? You know, he listen. Like, I'm still gonna argue that he was a sorcerer way before Strange was a thing. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? So who knows? And he's today the Sorcerer Supreme. But I brought up this image of just the shield as far as in Sam's hands and also in John Walker's hands. So um, here in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it like you mentioned, it established like a clear passing of the mantle. Initially, it was uh, false, and John Walker he actually proved to fall under that category of the super soldier serum uh, enhancing the bad, not just the strength but the bad. You know, I'm gonna say John Walker falls into that Green Goblin category of serum's gone wrong. You know, but then later on in the season, uh, Sam steps up to the plate, becomes who he got a suit from Wakanda and becomes Captain America, which um, I liked, and we are going to go more in depth when we actually do. We are going to kind of revisit the whole show and
Yes.
kind of break down the
Yes. Yes. Yes.
episodes. But this, even though Wanda came out first, this one, what I would say is the first step in terms of the passing of the torch. Cause
Agreed.
yeah,
Agreed.
so
Yeah.
yeah. Did you have anything to comment about this picture?
Oh no, that was kind of the big thing. Is just I feel like since this is the series that really started off the passing of the mantle, and I think that it was just perfectly done the way it was,
Mm-hmm.
and that it was Cap because that's a big shoe to fill,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think, and it adds more weight to the characters we're seeing who are coming in, like stepping up to the plate to take on, the other mantles we're seeing passed down. So, and I'm excited to dive more into that series once we get into it. What potentially this month, maybe next month, but just stay tuned,
Definitely,
everybody.
definitely. All right, and now next, what we have is the timeline split into new realities. Now, this is where the MCU got interesting. Okay, because so far everything has been linear, but now I'm gonna bring up that picture of the timeline splitting. It's like it's even before the movie comes out. This is definitely the multiverse of madness. Regardless of what Strange has going on in his life and his world, his universe, just looking at this picture, of just infinite timelines breaking off of other timelines and so on and so forth, it's going to be crazy as far as how they try to clean this all up. Now, we first get the glimpse of the multiverse in Loki, and honestly, watching Loki, I had no idea where the show is going to take me. Um, like I understood from Endgame, this Loki had a Tesseract, and he he didn't follow the natural course of the timeline. So we're introduced to the TVA, and then we're introduced to the infinite possibilities of Phase 4. So kind of, Grace, if you could just kind of dive in and continue from there.
Yeah. So obviously with like the TVA, or Loki, we were introduced to the TVA, and this is an organization whose objective is basically to sustain this one quote unquote sacred timeline, right? By nipping and like, pruning away any deviations from them, right? So basically, and I remember from like their like the orientation video I think that Loki gets in the beginning with like
Mm-hmm.
Miss Minutes and everything, like the multiverse is considered a dangerous thing to them. Like they're trying to prevent that existence of a multiverse, right? Like layers and infinite different realities kind of living and coexisting at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like safe to kind of say, but prior to the events of Loki, like we've been just looking at one stream, the MCU really pretty
Mm-hmm.
much up to this point. But now, with the birth of the multiverse, right after Sylvie pretty much sets up these chain of events,
Mm-hmm.
this gave birth to, I mean, Spider-Man, No Way Home,
Yep.
What If, like all of those different potentials, and this has really opened up the gate. I think we've had 10 years to appreciate just the consistency and cohesiveness of the storytelling, but this is where we get wild and just play with an infinite reality, and possibilities, which I'm excited to just kind of see us explore. It's almost like giving the MCU what I think is kind of cool about the DCEU, whatever their their little
Right.
abbreviation is.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have the freedom to just kind of do whatever story they want. If they want to clip it and connect it to something, they do. If it just wants to be a standalone thing, it can be. And so that's something that I think is so monumental and significant from this year, is that it really established us. And we knew, right? We knew we were getting the multiverse. We knew that this is kind of where the story was leading, but it kind of left us on the edge of our seats. Like, when is it going to be officially established? What are the new dynamics of this new world we're kind of diving into? And it's funny, I remember watching like the first episodes of Loki, and it's like everything they're teaching Loki contradicts the existence of a multiverse. So it's
Mm-hmm.
almost frustrating because we're getting the multiverse. Like all of this means we're not. And I think Loki really sets off all those chain reactions. So very significant for this phase for sure.
So, like, with that, right? Because I may have mentioned this in our No Way Home podcast, but this is where, um, for me, I feel whatever storylines they come up with, it's it can come to the point to where if y'all don't like it, that was in that universe, and not
Yeah.
in the main universe.
Yes.
It's no longer uh, linear, like we mentioned before, and it opens this up. I think the Watcher even says it in the intro of What If, like, to infinite possibilities, and of this is, like you said, it gave birth to the whole No Way Home. But even from there, like, I honestly feel this may be an early prediction, but this may be how Sony can have their own universe. and Morbius was supposed to drop this month on the 28th, but I think it's delayed.
Yes.
And maybe like until April or May or something like that. But with that being said, a lot of people are speculating now. It's like, oh, they have to reshoot. Oh, that could possibly be reshooting, maybe like putting Andrew Garfield cameo into that. So that is like a whole separate universe that, rightfully so, I guess Sony can do, being that that's theirs. You know, they own the properties. But now you may, well, I don't know, I know you like Spider-Man, or you maybe love Spider-Man, but say if it comes down to it, if we have another Spider-Man movie, if we have, like, say, an Amazing Spider-Man 3, and then we have the 3 other Spider-Man movies that Tom Holland has already signed to do, I may be Spider-Man'd out. I don't know. It's a lot to process.
Get out
It's a
of
lot
here.
to process because
Oh
I
my
know
God, no.
I know Sony is already making like the Kraven the Manhunter movie, and that may fall under that. So who knows? Andrew Garfield may very well be the only Spider-Man to actually get a Sinister Six. But again, I may be just doing these predictions a little early. We're not quite there yet. We're still wrapping up 2021.
See, well, we'll get there, guys. We're gonna revisit that topic just
Mm-hmm.
because I think we are gonna get Spider-Verse, like more things like that, and we'll get into it. We'll get into it.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh, see what you do, but no, you're wrong. The limit does not exist.
Okay. Okay. What else? What else happened?
Um, I was going to say that I think something that was very significant about this phase, and it's something I really didn't expect to be,
Mm-hmm.
is the depiction of just how much the blip, the snap affected everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with Infinity War and Endgame and all of that. Like, I initially, my first thoughts about the blip and all of this, the snap is like, how could bringing half of the universe back not be a good thing? You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, not be anything but a good thing. And we quickly learned that there were so many issues with that is still, I think, still going to kind of play out. I know for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that was a huge part of
Mm-hmm.
the storyline there. In WandaVision, we see from Monica Rambeau's perspective just how like traumatic and confusing the experience of everyone coming back really was for a lot of people. That scene where she wakes up and she's in the hospital, everything looks like it's like World War III. Like everyone's just, it's not happy the way we saw it in Endgame. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just birds chirping, the warmth in the air, none of that. And
Right.
I think that was something that I didn't think was going to give us a lot of story. So I thought that was really cool. And even up to Hawkeye, we kind of got a little bit more touch on like the blip and how it affected everybody. So it's something I didn't expect to bring so much storyline. But when you think of it, it's like, well, duh, like that was huge. People lost time with their families. Like
Mm-hmm.
people were, came back and their whole lives were disrupted, even if, they didn't realize that they were gone.
Right.
So I thought that was really cool this year.
Like those instances to where we saw people being blipped back, I'll agree they were cool. But the only thing that the only storyline that I did not like when referencing the blip, it's going to be repetitive here, but it was the Eternals. And the blip was brought back the energy necessary to bring to give birth to a celestial. Now, why why that was a thing, I'm still really trying to wrap my head around the whole thing. And I think the movie itself is going to, I think it drops either this week or next week on Disney Plus. I may have to rewatch it, but the blip, if anything, was supposedly supposed to end the world, basically. Like if the the Eternals did what they were supposed to and let the birth of the Celestial come to be, then there is no more Earth in this universe, you know. So I don't know. That was the only thing so far in Phase Four that kind of I felt could have been better. I won't say rubbed me the wrong way. I'll just say that I felt like it could have been better. And that movie in itself, like we mentioned before, it was like the first movie to have like a Star Wars like opening credit. You know what I'm saying? It was just like a totally different feel that we got in 2021. And like I looked at the list of movies, which we're gonna get to. Let's say next week we're gonna do our rating next week. But out of the 27 movies, that's the only movie to actually do that, you know. And it was a little bit more like it was the first to have that opening. It was the first to have a love scene. It was the first to feel a little bit more dramatic than Thor: The Dark World, because that was a drama in itself, you know. But yeah, that's something that also did happen in 2021. I just wanted
Yeah,
to add
and
that
you know
in there.
something, just because I know we talked about Eternals, but this is a wrap up. Let's talk about the things that kind of didn't sit so well. We'll kind of probably dive into it again, next week a little bit too.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Eternals, I feel like, yes, it could have been better. I don't think it was, how people are describing it to be like the worst movie that's ever been done. But I think where it really fell short is kind of things that you even brought up in our topic on that, is that there was just so much cast to be introduced. And I think for the load that they had, they did all right. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe their fault was they didn't have, little tie-ins that at least made us feel like, oh yeah, like I know this person. I seen this guy. Like give us a little bit of that um familiarity, because I think one of the reasons the Eternals flopped for a lot of people is that we're going in and seeing a lot of new things, like a whole new like species of beings that have existed here already. And we're no longer feeling what a lot of us just feel so proud of, like, which is our expertise. Like we go in and we're like, I know none of this, and so
But
it
let
kind
me
of
let me
like,
debate that. Just because uh I knew nothing of the first Guardians of the Galaxy, but that movie turned out to be a smash, you know?
mhm.
So I get that we're being introduced to 10 characters in one movie, okay? But being that we've had movies in the MCU that's had those type of numbers as far as characters, I feel like if we maybe wrote it a little better or directed it a little better, then the movie could have been different. It could have been better than what it was. It's just like I can't put my finger on it, but it just fell short. You know, I felt like if anything, like I said before, it was kind of crazy how the character who is as fast as the Flash is beating up the quote unquote Superman of this team. You know,
Yeah,
I was expecting
more.
this to be honestly. I'll call the Eternals. I was expecting them to be Justice League, just the Marvel version, and I was expecting everybody to have their respective powers to where, if anything, nobody can mess with uh, Superman, nobody can catch the Flash, and so on and so forth. You know, but it was the
Mhm.
opposite. Everybody was pretty much on an equal level playing field, just with their respective powers.
Yeah, I think it's just introduced a lot in a short period of time, and I feel like many things could have been done better. I feel like there's just a lot of factors that kind of made it not sit as well as it could have. And yes,
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think going into it, like my apprehensions were like, we're gonna see a lot of new people, new characters, like, but Marvel's handled a lot of characters that one. Like look at Endgame, look at Infinity War, like that. Those are a lot of characters,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not like we're just now seeing them on screen, but
Right.
I think I'm sure we're going to get more from what we learned from Eternals, just because that was like extinction level, like monumental event.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's what it was, is like we're dealing with something that is so catastrophic to Earth and we don't even know who these people are, you know what I mean? Like I don't know, but I feel like we're definitely going to get more of it, and I'm hoping that whatever content we get from these characters, like down the road, almost
Mm-hmm.
like amends what we saw on this one a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but kind of going back to the big picture, yeah, I would say like that's probably where Disney and Marvel just could have done better. Like all the other projects for me, I think landed super well.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of revisiting just some of like the ideas of the topics. I think I had one other like big one. Oh, actually, this is perfect. It was like the introduction of new heroes. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
where Eternals, I don't think landed fully. I feel like Shang-Chi did for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really exciting. I think Shang-Chi, yeah, it was before Eternal. So it was like the film to first really introduce a new character for this year, for this phase.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, there's a lot to that. And I think I'm happy that his was the introduction to these like this new phase of characters.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if it was done with Eternals, I feel like we would have felt different as we move forward. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy that they did it so successfully with Shang-Chi. And it's a big thing. Like this is such a transitional phase for the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, I feel like they did super well.
And one thing that I want to kind of get out before we switch topics from the wrap up is, um, say so far with Shang-Chi and let's say No Way Home. As of right now, they are, well, there's only four movies that came out in phase four, but they're the top two. And my reason being, them being in the top two was necessarily like because I saw something that I hadn't seen in the MCU, and I really enjoyed it, and I really like to compare this to Keanu Reeves. So
Uh,
kind of bear with me for a second, okay?
okay,
Because
okay.
because Keanu Reeves, great actor, makes great movies a majority of the time. Some go straight to Redbox. But as of recent, he has John Wick and The Matrix. Now, this isn't a Matrix podcast for any reason. I just wanted to bring this up to talk about this point. The reason why, like, I liked it, but it didn't really touch on the original trilogy was because I feel if the Matrix directors or writers or producers actually collaborated with the choreographers of John Wick, then they would have had a better movie. Because The Matrix to me was more so about the fight scenes, the kung fu. Yes, it's cool that he has powers, but seeing Neo fight was cool. And if they were able to bring Keanu, because he's still doing moves. He's 56 and still doing doing moves in John Wick that wasn't really like they didn't really do anything in Matrix. So it comes to show that right now I feel like choreography is coming back. Now going back to Marvel, Shang-Chi right now was the best choreographed fight scenes out of the MCU. In the MCU, we get a lot of CG fights. We get a lot of like tiny little hand fights and leg twists from Natasha Romanoff and all that. But at the end of the day, it was Shang-Chi and No Way Home to where we actually see Tom Holland get super physical with the Green Goblin. This wasn't a CG Spider-Man swinging into the villains or whatnot. They're going through fisticuffs. They're getting real physical, and with that, with both of those types of fight scenes, I feel like they carry an emotion. It's like you get the excitement, like oh shit, this is actually happening, but you're also looking like oh wow, like look at these moves, like look at what they're doing. Oh, Tom Holland is really going into the Green Goblin right now, you know? So the first part of this phase, I feel like if they shifted more into a little bit more choreography type fights as opposed to I'm not opposed to CG fights, but I get more out of those choreographed type situations, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
No, it totally does. And I feel like it's grounded in like our reality. So it's just it hits like it hits good. And just going starting off with like the Spider-Man one, I feel like the emotional weight behind it makes it that much
Right.
more of like a scene because we're dealing with a character who's like good at heart. He's like, I just want to be your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So to see him in such a dark place, like not holding back with intention to kill
Mm-hmm.
is it's a heavy scene, and it's paired with this amazing choreography. 100%, I agree. I feel like Shang-Chi is even like when it comes to choreography, I feel like that displayed it amazingly. Like that's absolutely like the scene that in my head comes to mind is like the bus scene. That scene is so, and honestly, maybe it's because it's really the first, like it's the big fight scene as the movie kind of starts off. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very, it hits, it lands. It's
Mm-hmm.
different than I think what the MCU's done. And what's the coolest thing is you're able to see the scene really well. Like you've
Mm-hmm.
seen movies where there's choreography, but it's like I can't tell what's happening. Like it's either,
Right.
it's not filmed correctly, the angles, it's too fast. Like with this one, you're able to appreciate like the flow of it. Like there's a lot of like practical. It's just so good. So I
Mm-hmm.
agree. I agree. I'm so happy you brought it up. Yeah.
No, like honestly, say I when I think of Shang-Chi, like the bus scene, excellent. But I don't know why when I think about like this choreography, like the one scene that pops into mind, there's like an overhead shot of Shang-Chi and let's say his master kind of going at it. Like they were at his sister's nightclub and he was chasing him down, and then they end up going head to head before his dad shows
Yeah.
up into that
Mm-hmm.
scene. But like the camera is shot overhead and you see like them just going at it back and forth like with all these moves, and I'm in the movie theater just
Giddy.
I was stuck, because me growing up, all I had as far as like that type of fight scenes was like you mentioned it in our Shang-Chi podcast. I had Jackie Chan, which this is almost similar to, and Bruce Lee. So seeing stuff like that, it's like I know fight movies are kind of getting redundant, like with the whole Ip Man series and things like that. But this was more refreshing for the fact that they can bring this into this universe, because this is something that we didn't see. This is something that we haven't seen in the MCU, and Kevin Feige said it himself at a Comic-Con saying that this is the first MCU kung fu movie, and
Yes.
that's exactly what he gave us. So I was really appreciative of that, of Shang-Chi.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. 100%.
Okay.
I think that's all I got for the 2021 wrap up. Are you
Okay.
ready to kind of get into our predictions?
Predictions. Let's do it.
Let's do
Boom.
it.
Phase 4 predictions. Now, just to start, you sent me an image, but I'm gonna post another one. I'm gonna post this image of Hawkeye and Wanda here. They're over here in Civil War. This is the airport scene, and my prediction is still uh, Hawkeye bringing Wanda out of the darkness. He is playing the big brother role to her, and if anything, I don't think the multiverse of madness is going to end with Strange saving the day, or if anything, um, because I don't think the multiverse of madness is going to end with the multiverse being closed. I believe that again, this is kind of like a multiverse saga, and this is just another chapter in that saga to where he closed the door in No Way Home, but this movie, The Multiverse of Madness, I think that the door is going to be left open, and uh, if Wanda does go dark, I feel like Hawkeye is that one to kind of bring her back and kind of ground her and let her know what it is. And you sent me an image of like the comic book, uh,
Yes. Yes.
and kind
So
of
that's actually oh, go ahead. You were going
no, no, no. You do your thing. You tell me.
I was gonna say, so this is a snippet from, I believe, volume 7 of the House of M storyline, a very big storyline that, encompasses Wanda, the X-Men, and a lot of it was used for the WandaVision show. We've talked a lot of the little things that were pulled from there, but I kind of pulled this out because I was trying to find a little snippet of when Wanda says, like, no more mutants, and I came upon this by accident, and I was like, chill, chill. Like, this is exactly the moment you're talking about, because this is after basically Wanda, like, kills, I think, half of the mutants, like half of, like, the Avengers, and then kind of brings them back. And so, like, Hawkeye comes in and he's just, well, she's like, are you mad? And then he's like, you killed me. Like, yes, I'm pissed off, but since they can't kill you, like, let me try to get you, like, to just, like, get out of this, like, let me just, like, make you make sense of this, and so I thought that was so cool to see it there. And I feel like that just heightened, like, the point that maybe this is something we're going to see at some point in this phase, because I definitely do not think that we are done with, Dark Wanda, if you will, just because, the internal struggle that she has between having everything she's ever wanted, which is truthfully, like, at the tips of her fingers, and then balancing that with the well-being of others and, like, just the general good. I don't think we're done with that. And I feel like it's a struggle I want to keep seeing, or just in a different fashion, or just kind of continue to see where she is in that. And so I hope it just births this moment to some capacity, whether, I don't know if it's going to be Multiverse of Madness, or just in a different project, but I hope we do get it, more so just for your satisfaction. But I thought you'd get, like, a little kick out of this, because it's basically just painting what you said.
Oh yeah, and say, like, as far as my prediction and me thinking that Clint is the one to bring her back to reality, I just randomly thought about it while you were just speaking just now. Why does Wanda have to even go dark? Like, it was established in WandaVision that she is powerful enough to create anything at will. Like, she created a vibranium android that went up a real vibranium android, so it was vibranium. Why does she have to go dark when she, if anything, can just manifest the kids that she lost in Westview?
I don't know. I mean, and I'm like, I don't know.
I don't know.
Because, I mean, if Wanda can't figure it out, how do you expect me? I'm just kidding. No. Well, something in Westview, like, as soon as she released the people of Westview, like, her reality, or the reality she created, no longer existed. You know what I mean? Like, in order for that reality to exist, like, those people needed to stay trapped, and she made the decision to let go of everything she's ever wanted to, allow that to happen. And the last time we see her, she's studying the dark holes. I'm imagining to see of different multiverses where her children do exist, and find a way to bring them into, this timeline, or for her to be able to experience that and live in that, So I think it's not more so, like, because she could have, I think, just done that, but I think it would have been to some sacrifice of other people, which she decided she no longer wants to do. And in terms of, like, oh, why do we need to see a Dark Wanda? Like, I feel like it's a very big part of her story. In a lot of different ways in, like, the comics. So I'm assuming we're still gonna see more of it. And maybe not even to the degree that we saw in Westview, where she's, taking control of all these people, but to something even just smaller, where Clint still comes in to ground her. Maybe some temptation as she's, like, learning more about the multiverse, to help Doctor Strange, and then Clint is the one to, like, steer it back and be like, there's other ways or something, But it's an interesting topic, and that's why I'm so sure we're not done with the conversation of it. And just kind of diving into, there's something that you mentioned a little earlier about, not, the multiverse of madness, not being the end of the multiverse, because it seems like the objective is to kind of close in what happened from No Way Home. Like, the trailer starts off with dialogue from No Way Home, which is suggesting, that this movie is going to really much be affected by those events still. But maybe Multiverse of Madness ends up with them realizing, like, hey, maybe this chaos needs to be let go. And I feel like those are things mentioned in either like the TVA or in something of those that effect. But like maybe this chaos, like maybe Wanda's like the key. Maybe at the end of it, they realize like there's actually a way for us to release this in a way that is okay, and it doesn't necessarily draw in all this danger to this universe or whatever. But it's exciting because there's just so many different possibilities. But the multiverse is going to be like I feel like it's just gonna have to, because I feel like we're definitely gonna have like her children come back, since I feel like the Young Avengers is something that seems to be kind of inching closer. So there's some way that they're gonna be brought into this world, our world.
Mm-hmm. So, say just the multiverse in general, because now I'm kind of thinking back as far as everything that came out in 2021. Do you believe that everything that we've seen is leading up to the events of Loki? Because the multiverse pretty much splits at the end of that, right? To where
Mm-hmm.
in No Way Home, all we got were villains being pulled from other multiverses. It wasn't as if the multiverse was, or the universe was splitting, you know. Strange just
Mm-hmm.
pretty much said that these beings are coming from other universes, you know. So, do you believe
A
that,
fracture, if you
right?
will. Yeah.
So, do you believe that everything that we've seen thus far is more so leading up to the split in Loki?
See, that's the question, right? Because Loki and like the TVA, all of those events, like it's kind of happening in their own little independent like form of time. Like I think they say like, oh, like time works differently here in the
Right.
TVA. So
Mm-hmm.
who knows how much time has
Mm-hmm.
passed? And maybe that is what's gonna happen. Like maybe like whatever is we're seeing right now maybe isn't after the events of the TVA, but maybe leading up to it, because
Mm-hmm.
I think some things are like brought up in Loki is how, the multiverse is like chaos, and how like the overlapping of the worlds, like X, Y, and Z. Um, and that's why like their solution was to just have this one timeline. So maybe with like the fractures of the multiverse, which is what we were seeing
Mm-hmm.
in No Way
Mm-hmm.
Home, that was, and that solution for Tom Holland's Spider-Man to just kind of be like, or Peter Parker to be like put away from that existence, was just as a band-aid solution to put that timeline back in place or something. So it's hard to say. Like I would like to think that it kind of seems like a cool idea to think that maybe what they're doing right now is them trying to preserve that timeline that they have right now. And maybe as it continues, we'll see that break that then aligns with the events of Loki or
Right.
something. It's so confusing, and I don't think all of us have all the answers just yet, and I don't think they want us to. So I'm excited for one that does end up being like ironed out. I don't think it's going to be in 2022. I
Right.
feel like it's just going to get more confusing before it becomes clear.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Like, say right now, the only thing that makes sense to me is that now, not just listening to you now, I feel like the multiverse of madness again is gonna leave the doors open, and with that, we're gonna start getting the instance of the infinite universes, and that may coincide with Loki. Now, the only reason why I say this makes sense is because of Kang. Kang is from the 30th or 31st century. So by this point, I can imagine that there has always been a split of the universe into the multiverse. And the Kangs find a way to meet each other, and like initially it was good before it became a battle, and initially somehow I feel like, being that the multiverse remains split up into that point, and then we get He Who Remains, um, somehow he's the one that I feel like closes it back and brings it into a singular timeline. Hence why I feel like he left that note to that one TVA, yeah,
Renslayer. Yeah.
agent or whatnot, because the multiverse was bound to happen, I believe. And all of these Kangs wouldn't have been part of that story if it didn't. But he had to find a way to bring it all into one. So I feel, if anything, by the end of this saga, I think Kang may be seen as bad, but who knows? He may eventually later on be the savior of the universe.
I like that theory and just kind of like backtracking to because there was like a multiversal war before the establishment of like the TVA, which we were introduced to initially in Loki, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way, if I'm remembering correctly, because obviously it's been a little while since we've seen Loki, you know, these multiverses, right, were overlapping one above the other and they were coexisting, but at some point, right, like there was an awareness of other variants of yourself, and then there was conflict of like, I guess, the dominance and who's in control. And with the multiversal war, the he who remains, who was, I guess, like the winner of that multiversal war,
Mm-hmm.
established the TVA to then create one sacred timeline to prevent any like conflicts with branch realities and variants and nexus events and all of that. But it's almost like the containing or the attempt to contain all of this is what's the chaotic aspect of it. Maybe like the multiverse of madness, initially is like, oh, we're trying to mend all of this, but in reality, maybe it's releasing that chaos and finding a way for those realities to coexist is the solution in the end. You know what I mean? So it's all over the place, but like I feel like it's like kind of how you said, like the multiverse is gonna be left open. Like otherwise, like how is the existence of any of these other films and possibilities ever going to happen? You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Like something I'm so like firm in belief is that we're not done with like the Spider Verse. I really would love to see like that storyline really play. The Spider-Verse storyline with like the inheritance and all of that, like I feel would be so cool. But even if it's not that exactly, it would just be so cool to see like Cindy Moon's Silk Spider Woman
Mm-hmm.
and Gwen Stacy Spider Woman. Miles Morales, I believe, exists or he does exist in the Tom Holland Spider Verse. So we don't need to have like the existence of the multiverse for his story to continue, but in general, like I feel like it's gonna have to be left open, So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting and it's also like very confusing, but it's that's why we're here, guys, so we can discuss and try to find what might be the answer to the all of it.
Right, because I feel like not just in the MCU, but just in other shows and movies, or even in Endgame, I feel like it's been explained that time is a loop, okay, and no matter what happens, like it'll circle back around, and the same things will happen no matter what. So I think that's why it makes sense to me, to where I feel like he who remains, he that variant, he will always be the one who remains. It's not going to be another version of him that takes over the sacred timeline. It's just going to be more so him. He was destined to be killed by Sylvie that eventually splits the timeline, but then he comes back in the 30th century to put the timelines back together. So
Mm-hmm.
I believe, if anything, it will come full circle. But I am interested in seeing, because I posted the Spider Verse image that you sent. I like because I saw the trailer of the new one, which he's looking
Mm-hmm.
older now, in the older animated version of himself, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool, you know. And yeah, I'm all for any of this multiversal stuff. If the Spider Verse is going to continue on that, because uh, that other character is in it too, right? The Spider Woman, what's her name?
Gwen Stacy, that one.
Yeah, yeah, because she was in the trailer. So obviously there's going to be another multiversal situation with that. And if that connects to the MCU, if Sony does us a solid and
Oh,
somehow connects us to that, then I'm all about it, because even in the original Into the Spideyverse, you can see all of these different spider beings. I won't say Spider-Men, but these spider beings, and they're all kind of like animated differently, you know. So who knows if we get something like that with the type of animation that we got with What If it all like kind of merges together, you know. So at the end of the
Yeah.
day, again, it's a lot, but it's a lot of good stuff.
It's a lot of good stuff. Like I'm excited for it, and just kind of diving into the possibility of the Spider Verse. That's why we're like, oh, I'm kind of like pooped out of like Spider. It's like no, because there's so many. There's so many, and their stories aren't all like repetitive. They don't all have like the same exact points. Like I think we what was the absolute point? Like there's a lot of individual stories within them, but like I think Into the Spideyverse very much like portrays what is similar with that throughout, which is that they have severe loss, which pushes them to become like better heroes. But even within like the spiders, like there's variations with their powers. Like Miles Morales has the ability to go invisible and has like electrical powers. Like that's so unique to the ones that we've seen so far. So I don't feel like it could. I mean, sure, like at some point anything I think could become repetitive, but with the brains behind Marvel and what's been happening so far, I feel like there's a way for them to introduce a lot of these other characters individually, and maybe it leads up to this huge like Spider-Verse battle, which I would love to see. um but even if that's something we don't dive into, I am so sure that Miles Morales is going to come into the scene
You
for
hope, you
like
hope so bad.
no, this is what you said to me before like it became clear that the three Spider-Men were going to come into this film, and you're doing it to me again, Chill. Like it's gonna happen. Like aside from the fact that we had a lot of little mentions about like just kind of nudging at like a black Spider-Man and all that in No Way Home.
Mm-hmm.
Like Miles Morales exists in the Tom Holland universe. Like it does. And it's not a I'm sorry, a post-credit scene. It was a deleted scene
Mm-hmm.
where they explicitly say Miles, but in the film we still hear like the character who's essentially supposed to be Prowler mention about like, yeah, I have a nephew and this and that when he's being interrogated by Spider-Man. So it's like it's canon, it's a thing. And why would they put Miles in there or mention him if they don't plan to
For
do something with
y'all,
him in the future?
that for y'all, just because at
No.
the end of the day, yes, Donald Glover's character is Miles's uncle, right? But
Yeah.
are you saying that somewhere in this universe with Tom Holland, uh, there's going to be more radioactive spiders for now Miles to go snooping around and get bit? Like, come on.
Yes, because that's how it happens. That's what happens.
Ah,
And like and I love where we left off with Tom Holland Spider-Man, because we obviously are gonna see him develop and grow and mature, especially after the events he's had,
mm-hmm.
and he's all by himself. So I feel like as his films continue, because we know we're going to get him for at least three
Right.
more, like maybe it's on that last one where like he's in a place of maturity where he can mentor
Mm-hmm.
someone to take his place in a sense. And in the comics, like you know Peter Parker doesn't have to die for Miles Morales really to be Spider-Man. Like there are storylines where they kind of exist together, and there is like a mentor kind of relationship there. And there obviously there are also storylines where for Miles Morales to like take over, like Peter Parker does die. So there's different ways that we can see it, but I feel like we're going to see it at some point. And especially with the fact that we do have 3 confirmed films for Tom
Mm-hmm.
Holland, it just seems very possible for that to be the case.
Right. And I'm not mad at that, just because I'm thinking about the first Spider-Verse. It was like, I feel like even when he got bit, when Miles got bit, the Spider-Man of that universe was still alive. Like he died, but there were technically 2 Spider-Men before the other, I think it's Peter J. Parker showed up.
Peter
Peter
B.
B.
Peter B.
Parker. Yeah,
Peter B.
before that
Yes.
Peter Parker showed up. There were 2. So I won't close off the possibility of Miles being bit in the same universe as Tom Holland. Okay.
I'm just saying. And that's in this universe. Like, let alone opening the Spider-Verse. Like, that would just be like, we have Mayday Parker, we have the Scarlet Spider. Like, there's just so many possibilities. And I feel like a lot of these have started to become more
Mm-hmm.
mainstream, where like the fans are starting to demand it, you know? And honestly, like, for the studios, it's kind of like if it makes money, like they're down to do it. And with the success of Into the Spidey, I'm sorry, well, yes, Into the Spideyverse and No Way Home, I don't see why would they wouldn't try to make that a thing. So that's all I will say on
Okay.
that.
So tell me, because I haven't brought the image back up, but like I'm gonna bring up the one image where you said let there be mutants. Now I want to kind of discuss this just because um in the trailer I didn't know who people were talking about, but you mentioned her name before, but like I guess she has some connection to the mutants. Can you kind of break that down for me as far as the woman?
Are you talking about America
Yeah,
Chavez? That
yeah.
one? So America Chavez comes from, I don't know if it's a different dimension. I want to say it is. But in her utopian society, I believe like she has two moms that she's trying to find. She somehow ends up on this dimension on Earth, and like she's able to create portals, I believe, to other parts of the dimensions or within the multiverse
Mm-hmm.
with that appear kind of like stars. And during the trailer for Multiverse of Madness, there's a scene where Doctor Strange is kind of falling through this portal, and the shape is very softly resembling of a star. So I'm thinking her powers are going to be aligned to that in the MCU. And in terms of her connection with like the X-Men and the mutants, I don't think she's considered a mutant because she's from like a different
Mm-hmm.
planet, and like her powers, I think, are explained via that. But you know, the mutants in general are still something that we've been very and like much anticipating ever since the announcement of Marvel Disney buying Fox
Mm-hmm.
right back in like I think like
Right.
2019, and it's something we know is coming. They teased us so hard in WandaVision with the Pietro Maximoff
Definitely.
there, using like the Fox's X-Men,
Right.
Quicksilver, but we know it's gonna happen. We know it is, and I'm wondering if like Multiverse of Madness. I feel like I'm putting so much weight on this film. I'm like, it'll establish all these things. Like, I'm just wondering, like, maybe it's gonna be a very soft nod, like maybe not a full introduction of them, but maybe like something that's a lot more solid of a confirmation that they're like around the corner, because we haven't seen anything specifically to suggest the X-Men necessarily, but something that a theory that I'm really liking, and I think it'd be really cool if we saw, was in the comics, like there's this famous line that Wanda says, which is like no more mutants, but if it's shifted instead and it be like let there be mutants, and she might be the gateway for these new powers to come out or something. So it's something I'm excited for to see, and it's something that we know is coming. And I'm wondering if 2022 is when we're going to see something that's a lot more solid in that. You know?
I'm like I am curious. I just think right now, well, I can't say it's too soon because they've already established Blade is somewhere in the MCU. He's alive. But like let's say when it comes down to mutants just in general, I remember way back when we were talking about WandaVision, you referred to her connection in the house of M, you know. So um if there's a prediction out of that, if you think there is, go ahead. I like because I don't know anything about the House of M, but if this is something that you feel maybe in the multiverse of madness or beyond, well, kind of give us your thoughts on that.
I just feel like she could be some form of a gateway to the introduction of the X-Men. Like she is a kind of like the first mutant really being like displayed here, because we know her
Mm-hmm.
abilities. Like, you know, in the comics, she is a mutant. And then with like WandaVision, it almost kind of retconned her origin in the MCU for us to know, oh, she's always had these abilities, but, you know, the experimentation that Strucker, you know, did almost unlock them even more so, you know, to these levels and extremes. And so I feel like she might be the key to kind of bringing the X-Men and, you know, just the mutants into play in
Yeah.
general. And we know that the love interest in what is it? Carnage's love interest in Venom, you know, they use the word mutation as well. And, you know, obviously, like, Venom is, you know, like Sony, all of that. But now they're very much an overlap with this, you know. So I feel like it's coming. And I don't think we're going to get, you know, see like the Fox X-Men appear on screen in 2022. I mean, if we do, that'd be awesome. I think it's just we're gonna get something a little bit more solid in terms of like their introduction to give us more of an idea of how that's gonna come about. And I feel like Multiverse of Madness would just be like the place for that. You know, with however that film ends, we both, I think, suspect that the door is going to be left open for the multiverse. And maybe that's where we get like a post-credit scene where we see maybe one of the Avengers appear, or not the Avengers, the X-Men appear for us to be like, we're finally getting it. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But my eyes are on Wanda, and you know, something I also thought was gonna happen, especially after Endgame, but I feel like I've changed my thoughts on this, is that I thought that the events of the snap and the blip maybe would be the catalyst to kind of unlock people's extra X chromosome that, you know, unlocks their mutation. But with the blip being such an influence in the events of Eternals, I feel like that would sound kind of derivative or almost repetitive for that to be the catalyst to unlock also the mutations. You know what I mean? Like, for like the blip to be the catalyst for the emergence and the introduction of mutants, I think would kind of feel repetitive. But that's also something I thought in the past. But at this point, I'm kind of looking at Wanda to be potentially the key to bringing them in.
I'm sorry. I was just a little distracted because I was looking for the titles that Marvel Studios released last year as far as what's coming out, because I looked at the collection of movies that I have, right? And as of right now, say Phase 1 of the Infinity War saga total was, I think, 6 movies total. We are 4 movies in. Do you think that Phase 4 is almost wrapped up movie wise? Just because, like, I think at the start of the saga, like, say this first, let's call it a book, right? This book of these chapters, it started off slim, and it's like you're kind of introducing these characters, and then like as the
Mm-hmm.
phases progress, then we get more movies. Like we got 6 in Phase 1, then we got another 6 in Phase 2, but then after that we get 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 movies in Phase 3. You know, so do you
Yes.
think that
Yeah.
Phase 4 is almost done?
I mean, just with looking at what's to come, what has come this year and what's coming next year, I mean, who knows if that's where they're going to quote unquote wrap up this phase. And you know, I think each phase has had somewhat of like a theme. You know, I think the first one was very much just introducing these Avengers in their own films and then wrapping them into their, you know, when they finally like combine. Like, each has its theme, and I feel like if that is the case, like, what would we label this overarching theme? Like, would it just be birth of the multiverse? Like, these 2 years maybe will accumulate that, like, Phase 4, and maybe Phase 5 would handle essentially everything that could now be existing and possible because the multiverse is fully unleashed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's interesting, and it makes me sad. I mean, it's not like the end of a phase means we're not going to get movies. It just means it's kind of shifting into a different like theme or intention or direction. But you know, I think how it's progressed, I feel like Phase 1 and then Phase 2 had more films than Phase 1, and then Phase 3 had even more movies than Phase 2. And so I feel like if it's following that build, like maybe we still have a little bit more before we can call this phase like over, you know?
Okay. Don't.
So at least halfway. We're at least halfway into the phase, or I mean, at most halfway into this phase. And I think maybe like a third. Like that's where my heart says, because I feel like we just barely introduced all this stuff, you
Well,
know?
if anything, right? Because right now I've only listed the four movies. We've gotten plenty of story outside of the movies in Phase Four. We've gotten four shows to add to the story of this timeline. So I just posed that question just because, like, let's say, like, back to the book reference. Let's say this first book of the next saga for the MCU is the post blip book. Like, because so far we've gotten a lot of blip references and everything that's happened after the blip, and I would say it rightfully started after Endgame, because Far From Home was technically a post blip movie in itself, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
say right now in this phase four, it's all about how we have pretty much responded to the blip, uh, how we've adjusted and adapted. But then phase five, we're gonna dig a little bit more into the multiverse. Not saying the multiverse of madness is the end of phase four, but I'm saying that this is opening the door to, like we've mentioned before, infinite possibilities. So right now,
Mm-hmm.
I know for sure in this phase we're gonna have, movie wise, the multiverse of madness. We're getting the next Ant Man, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. Uh-huh.
and that has already been confirmed. Where Kang is the main villain there. So from there, we already have two more movies that are kind of touching or diving into the start of this multiverse, because again, we don't know when the multiverse starts, is it, if it's all in line with Loki or not. But uh, this first phase in this new saga, phase four, I feel like it's just more so wrapping up everything post blip.
And you know, so I feel like that gives me more clarity to kind of like what we were discussing, which is like, what would this phase really be like? This, what is the themes of this phase? And I feel like it's very much a transitional phase, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which I like because I feel like it's honoring what we've seen in the previous saga without just flipping straight into like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Happy Go Lucky. Like that would feel almost disrespectful to what we've lost
Right.
in Endgame, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I think like the phase of the purpose of this phase being very much like transitional, right? Like, you know, the passing of the mantle, you know, post blip events and, you know, consequences, and then also kind of tailing that into what I'm assuming, yeah, like phase five is probably gonna be very like multiversal themed,
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, connecting that into what Phase Five will be revolving with. And just as a quick correction, I think Ant Man is going to actually be 2023. So who knows? That might be like a Phase Five film by the time we get there. Who
Okay.
knows? You know, but yeah, like I think we're probably like maybe halfway through what I think this phase is going to consist of, and it's probably going to still like lead into those same topics we talked about. But it's exciting. It's very exciting to see what's coming up.
Okay. Well, I want to bring it back to, like, because we're wrapping it up. Because I didn't. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add to that? Any more predictions?
You know, something I wanted to kind of revisit because we did talk about Val a little bit as we were kind of connecting with Falcon and the Winter
Mm-hmm.
Soldier, but you know, Val I think is really the one that's playing the role of like Nick Fury in this phase,
Mm-hmm.
very similar to what we saw in like the first phase of the Infinity Saga, where he like actively collecting, you know, people for a team that's going to be assembled. And you know, when we reflect back to that first phase of Infinity War and
Mm-hmm.
really the first phase of the MCU in general, that we saw that like at the end of Iron Man, at the end of like Thor, like that was a lot of the things connecting these films to ultimately lead to the Avengers. And so I think, and the biggest assumption is it's going to be like the Thunderbolts, right? Like Thunderbolt Ross is going to be a big thing in it
Mm-hmm.
as well. And in terms of like the comics, I know at least I haven't diven, 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 dive in.
Dove.
stove. I'm like, which one is it? You guys get it into like stories revolving with the Thunderbolts too, like intimately. But it starts off with essentially like villains posing as heroes, but eventually transitioning into something more of like anti-heroes. Like they're not bad, they're not pure perfect, but they're attempting to do some good. And maybe that's what we're gonna see, because we have people so far like we know Yelena Belova is connected with Val. We know John Walker, who's not a horrible guy. It's just he crumbled under the heavy weight of the shield, which is, understandable.
But
Like we
wait,
have
wait.
people. Go ahead.
Do we know that uh Yelena's with Val? Because as of right now, we do know that she's been given false information on Hawkeye, and Hawkeye
Mm-hmm.
proved proved that he had nothing really to do with the death of her sister. So who knows? Who's to say that she's still with Val? You know.
That's true. That's true. That's very true. But just in general, like we've seen characters who aren't explicitly like bad, but they're just not like purely good
Mm-hmm.
either. So I feel like maybe that's still the path we might see the Thunderbolts kind of take, where it's, maybe they're banded together and they realize the missions that they're kind of going on, right? Like Dark Avengers, they're not for the better, like the good of the world. So maybe they shift gears into trying to do something better. Kind of like the Guardians of the Galaxy in a way, where it's like, are we going to do good today? Are we going to do bad? Or are we going to do a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
both? I think maybe like the route of the Thunderbolts, as we see them kind of brought together, assuming that's the team that's being assembled here, will eventually turn into something like that of like anti-hero. But yeah, that's actually a really good question. Like, I wonder if Yelena, like, I'd be kind of mad, right? Like, you just sent me to kill some guy for like to avenge my sister, and truthfully he wasn't even responsible, which I'm sure Val is aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the last little piece of just predictions, because it's actually pretty big. Like she's the one who's actively kind of recruiting, and that's very attuned to like the original
Avengers. Yeah,
saga.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I don't think I have any other. The only prediction I had was Hawkeye bringing Wanda back to life, back to reality. You know, so I am open for any and every possibility. Like I mentioned before, after like just after I hate to say it, the pandemic hit, I wasn't sure where these shows were going to go because before the pandemic 2019, we knew we were getting these shows, but I wasn't expecting them to be as good as they were. And right now, it's like we're setting up so much and all it can be right now is super excited, you know? So, uh, yeah, I can't really think of
Yeah.
anything else.
I know. I was, and just on that note, truly, because this is like the end of something that had been building for 10 years. Really, like Thanos had been all the way from the original Avengers
Right.
film. And so to see that saga close, it's a scary and vulnerable thing, because it's like, are we done with the MCU? Like, is it going to be able to last another 10 years? And honestly, with just what we've seen in this first year of this new phase, I feel like the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there is so much story to still tell.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I mean, just exciting overall. I think the last thing, but I won't dive too deeply because I feel like you know how I can get when it comes to Vision and
Mm-hmm.
Wanda. We're gonna see this, White Vision come around
Mm-hmm.
again. In the comics, what happens is, Vision obviously becomes the White Vision and Wanda is lost, but eventually Wanda actually ends up with Wonder Man, who's the one whose brainwaves are the one who basically created Vision to be as human as he
Mm-hmm.
is. So it makes sense for Wanda to then end up with him, but then eventually Vision kind of comes back and he's like, I am me again and I like love you, but now you're with someone else. And she gives him her brainwaves to use to make his own like
Mm-hmm.
person. And that leads to chaos and ends up with a lot of murder. And I just feel like at this point anything's possible. And I think that would be kind of fun to see. So,
Jeez,
not that I
I
think.
totally forgot about White Vision and what role he can play because we saw him briefly in Westview and then he dipped out and we haven't seen him since. You know, so he is out there. But one thing I want to Actually, we're gonna have to save it for another podcast. Is even though we kind of did a wrap up today, I wanna talk about the facts. I don't want to talk about predictions. I want to kind of dive into who's out there, what weapons are out there, and um, what we can expect because like I don't even know if we discussed it here. I didn't come to the realization like I remember being told that like in the comics, uh, Shang-Chi is Shang-Chi's like the strongest Avenger, right? But I didn't understand it until watching it again recently to where uh, the woman, the aunt in Ta Lo, she mentioned that that gate calls out to it's been calling out to multiple people and basically been calling out to the strongest person who they believe can open the gate. And initially, before I saw Shang-Chi, I was like, how is Shang-Chi stronger than the Hulk? And the gate didn't call out to the Hulk at all. It was calling out to the bearer of the Ten Rings, you know? So I think that's what makes more sense to me now as far as how and why Shang-Chi is considered to be the quote unquote strongest Avenger. So let's let's talk about that on another day as far as let's say abilities and the villains that we know of. And real quick, I want to bring back up the merch. Okay.
Oh, and by the way, that was beautiful. Honestly, that little snippet about Shang-Chi, that was well said. Snaps for chill, everybody.
Thanks. Thanks.
I was like, chill. That was
Look at
good.
that. But yeah, everybody, we got the merch that's live today. Again, the link will be in the bio, on our YouTube and on our Instagram. So check it out. Buy some stuff. I already got a sweatshirt on the way with a hat. Grace already has a shirt. I gave it to her as an early birthday,
Order.
birthday slash Christmas.
I'll order
gift.
like one of everything.
But yeah, y'all check it out, and yeah, I hope you all enjoy it. I'm gonna bring it back to now our start screen here. This was episode 16, and these episodes are gonna be rolling because now Grace and I we've decided we're going beyond the bi-weekly. We're
We're gonna be weekly this.
we're
Yeah,
gonna
it's gonna
be
be.
week
It's
to
a commitment.
week, every Friday, same time, same network.
Exclusive relationship now because it's every Friday.
Yeah.
So be ready, guys. We have so much to break down, Marvel and DC.
Mm-hmm.
So we're excited to just highlight it all for you guys. So check out the merch. Check us out next week on Friday. We're super excited for all to come in 2022. And you can. That was it.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
again, this has been another episode of the Comic Cinematic Universe. Grace, I will holler at you.
You guys. Bye.
Bye.